back to another episode of Resiliency Gardening. I'll be Corey Ekman, your homesteading graduate assistant at SRU's McCoskey Center. So in light of the final frost date of May 9th that has come and gone, I want to give you a few tips and tricks just in case our gardening season doesn't look so promising and frost does roll back in. So I'll be speaking to that as well as some things that you can transplant or direct sow in your garden right now. It's pretty much all hands on now, so let's get started.
You may have recognized this here row cover from a previous video about transplanting. It can raise the temperature from the outside world almost 8 to 10 degrees higher underneath it, so it kind of acts like a warm blanket for your growing veggies. A row cover also reduces the amount of moisture that can kind of permeate through it. Therefore, if it were to rain all day or even snow all day and then come freeze overnight, the ground won't freeze up as bad and your plants won't freeze up as bad because the moisture content will be less. Some people even use blankets or just sheets of plastic to ward off the frost, or in this case, snow. Whether you use a row cover or a blanket, make sure that the material is not resting on your plants, as this will transmit the water back and forth and ultimately will still frost your plants. And so you could use hoops like I do, or even just stakes to keep the blanket or the row cover up off of your plants. So if you think about this, if you've ever slept in a tent and you've been pushed up against the side wall of the tent overnight, and you wake up and your sleeping bag is just totally drenched, that's kind of what's going to happen to your plants, except they're going to freeze and their cells will burst. Now, this is another option to help combat frost. Although this is a picture of plastic sheeting, because I couldn't find a picture that wasn't copyright sensitive of this product. The product is called Biotella, and it looks something and acts like plastic in a way, but it's actually made of corn. It acts as an insulation measure to your soil. The color of the Biotella is black so that when the sun is actually beating down on it, it absorbs that heat into the soil. And so it's good for plants like tomatoes that prefer that hotter soil temperatures. Even if the chance of frost is done, consider Biotella ultimately because it can raise that soil temperature for plants, as well as it reduces weeding almost to none, and it's biodegradable at the end of the season.
Now containers are another great option that you can use, and they kind of act like a greenhouse. If your plants are small enough, I didn't have a big enough container for my plants, but you can use like a milk jug that's cut in half and you can put it on your plant overnight to help with defrost. So again, it acts like a mini greenhouse. But my warning is that you don't want to keep it on longer than overnight. So right in the morning, you can pop that off and let the sun actually come down and hit it. Otherwise, you're going to scorch your plant or, take all of its moisture out of it by doing so. So say frost was going to roll in and I wanted to make sure my peas were going to be okay overnight. So I would just take my little container and pop it over top of it. And keep it in contact with the ground like that and leave it there overnight and then come out in the morning, take that off and let nature do its thing.
Lastly, mulching is another option in which helps you combat frost if it were to happen, and this is more of an option as to when you're closing out your garden beds, when you're done with them for this season, but it can also help if there's just a one-time frost coming through. You could either use leaves to mulch around your root systems of your sensitive plants, or you can use just those wood chips and that type of mulch to kind of build a layer or a barrier around your plants.
A few things that you can transplant. I have those flowers that we talked about in a past video, so you could do your zinnias or calendulas. In this case, I have some nasturtiums that are ready to go in. So I'm just going to dig a little hole and pop that in there and let it go. So it is good to plant after it rains. That's a pro tip. But it rained a couple days ago. My soil is a little dry. So some other things that you can transplant right now into your garden bed would be any leafy greens that you started indoors, as well as your peppers and herbs, and in my case some tomatoes. And so pro tip 101 is that actually my tomatoes don't look that great right now. I probably did the mistake of like overwatering or underwatering them. I have some yellowing leaves, as well as this one is actually starting to flower. So I'll bring that up close. Maybe you can see it, or I'll show you a picture here, but it's already starting to flower and like will make that fruit, and it's trying to go to seed. And although this thing is like maybe 8 to 10 inches tall, it's going to get a lot taller. It's a tomato plant. So that means that this plant is very stressed. So whatever I was doing to it inside, it was very stressed, and hopefully by transplanting it, it'll become a little bit healthier. If not, again, I may have to buy some transplants but that are already healthy. But so that is a tip. You want to be able to pinch off these flowers if you see them when your tomatoes this small. So eventually you won't want to pinch off the flowers, because that'll become those fruits that you want. So I'm going to demonstrate how to transplant your tomatoes. So when you're planting your tomatoes, you can kind of dig your holes first, see where what it looks like in your garden bed, and if you don't like it, cover up that hole back again and see what the spacing will look like. And tomatoes should be spaced like a foot at the very minimum apart, but many of the tomato packets will tell you about 18 inches apart. And so I'm hoping this will be good enough spacing for mine. And then you just want to take the tomato plant out of the container and pop it into the hole, and kind of you can break up that root system. So I'll kind of show you that. This one has a sturdier stem. I'm going to kind of turn it upside down, give it a little pat, and pull it out of here. There we go. So I'm going to kind of break up its root system here. I don't really want to break its roots, but I want to kind of make that soil a little bit less dense. I kind of got some root bounding issues going on, but it's not too bad. That's pretty normal. This thing is ready to pot up and ready to go into a bed. I'm going to get my hole a little deeper here. There we go. We'll just cover that thing back up. Again, tomatoes do pretty good when you put some soil against their stems, but other plants won't do as hot as tomatoes do with that. And so I'm just tamping it down a little bit and not too worried if soil gets onto the sides of it. And there you have one of my tomatoes, and I will put in the other one. So some things that you can direct sow right now would be your zucchinis, herbs, and then in my case, cucumbers. You can pretty much direct sow anything at this point, as long as you are confident that last frost is over with. So I'm going to go by what the seed packet says, and I'm going to plant these about every 3 inches, and about 2 seeds every 3 inches. So I'm going to put some in my hands. I made a little furrow like I had previously done when I planted carrots and beets. I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing here. And the packet tells me to thin them. And so I will do that once they start to grow up a little bit and start to compete with each other. And then I will just cover these back up with some soil. These are called Mexican sour cucumbers. I got these from Fruition Seeds, and they look like tiny little watermelons. So they won't really be like a canning cucumber, but they'll be just as interesting and hopefully just as tasteful. So I'm just gonna slightly cover these back up, and then I will tamp them down, and I will eventually get a trellis here. And I used a little bit of damp soil to kind of get them started. I didn't want to start them in dry soil. It's also easier for the seed to kind of start picking up some water and getting that, again, that cue to start to germinate for me. And so those are some things that you can direct sow now. Today's final thought is from Joel Salatin. He wrote a book called Folks, This Ain't Normal, a farmer's advice for happier hens, healthier people, and a better world. And the quote goes, "The first supermarket supposedly appeared on the American landscape in 1946. That is not very long ago. Until then, where was all the food? Dear folks, the food was in homes, gardens, local fields, and forests. It was near kitchens, near tables, near bedsides. It was in the pantry, the cellar, the backyard. And so I wanted to start out with that quote of our gardening season because, you know, we have this feeling, whatever stage you're at, whether you have just planted some things direct sowed or transplanted them, or if you haven't started at all, some of you have even harvested things if you planted beets or radishes a little while back. So we're all at different stages, but to have this backbone of food security as well as, you know, going through some of these frost states that that's already impacted us a lot, whereas it was more of a snow than it was a frost, you know, that shows our resilience. That really keeps us in the loop of gardening and actually makes me want to push further into my garden and see what it's capable of doing. And so I hope you're with me on that. I actually pulled off my row cover this morning and there was a big slit in the side of it, and all of my veggies underneath that were growing are now pretty zapped by the frost that came through last night. And so huge bummer. But at the same time, there's no shame that I'm probably going to buy some transplants that are healthy and happy that I can just pop into my bed and, you know, be a little more hands-off rather than trying to nurse these pretty yellow-looking cabbages and broccolis back to life. It's not going to serve me as well. So definitely no shame if you're one of those people that got some frost that hit your bed a little unexpectedly the last week. So with that being said, thank you again for watching. Be sure to check out our social media pages. We have some pretty cool news coming up for programming events for little kids in your home maybe, and so stay tuned for those, and thanks again for watching.
I have worked upon the hillsides where the pines sing in the wind, where the renters lived before me and the miners before them.